Hi, I'm Helen Bowden, CEO of the British Dyslexia Association. We're here to talk about dyslexia, and with me I have Ruby.
Hi, I'm Ruby Jensen-Jones. I'm 16 years old and I have dyslexia. So, Helen, what is dyslexia?
Well, that's a really good question. So dyslexia is really differences in the way that somebody's brain processes information, particularly information to do with language. And that's why for dyslexic people, quite often you might see difficulties with learning to read, reading quickly, understanding what they've read, spelling, sometimes with writing, sometimes with remembering things, sometimes with being organised. But also there are particular sort of benefits of being dyslexic. So because the brain is processing in a different way, it does mean that it's able to access different parts of itself to problem solve and be creative and innovative. So although dyslexia brings particular challenges, it can also bring particular strengths as well. So when were you diagnosed with dyslexia, Ruby?
So I was about 7 or 8 when I was diagnosed, and it was through school really. My reading kind of ability and speed was definitely a lot slower than like my peers, and I wasn't as good at spelling and things like that. I did always love like hearing stories and listening to people read to me, but I just couldn't like process the words myself, and I just didn't understand the stories. So yeah, the school kind of told my parents, like, we think Ruby might have dyslexia. I think it's a good idea to get her tested. So I went, and that's when I was diagnosed.
Yeah. And what sort of impact did it have on you when you had that diagnosis?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was kind of conflicted emotions, because a part of me was really relieved that I knew why, and that it wasn't just kind of that I'm stupid and I don't understand things. There was actually a reason why I'm a bit slower and I can't like spell as well and things like that. But at the same time, it was kind of annoying, because I thought, oh, why has this happened to me? Why do I have to be the one with dyslexia? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes people worry about having that label.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
so would you say it's an advantage or a disadvantage or a benefit in
Yeah.
terms of how it makes you feel as an
Definitely.
individual?
Well, I mean, when I was younger and first kind of diagnosed, I was so kind of embarrassed about it and kind of scared of telling people, and I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want to be different or labelled any particular way. I hated it so much. But now that I've kind of got older, I've learned that it's not actually a problem. I just kind of deal with it, and I have my ways of dealing with it. And it's kind of something to embrace and not be scared of and not be shy about. And really tell people.
Yeah, and I think that's important, isn't it? It's that raising awareness
Definitely.
and developing understanding.
Yeah, definitely.
And how do you find your teachers at school with that?
Yeah, I mean, they are really understanding and they're really helpful. I think teachers, when you kind of come in on the first day of school, of course, they're all made aware and they all know that you do struggle. But I think sometimes as the year progresses, they can sometimes forget. And I'm kind of the type of person that likes to be kind of where all my peers are, and I don't like to fall behind, or I don't like to make a fuss or complain or things like that when I don't understand. So I think that can lead teachers to sometimes forget. So if I do make a spelling mistake or I read something out loud and I kind of stumble, they kind of almost forget that I do have dyslexia. So that can be kind of hard.
Yeah.
But generally they are supportive, and they help me.
And when you do get sort of spelling corrected and things,
Yeah.
how does that kind of make you feel?
Definitely. Well, I mean, it's definitely hard, especially when you've kind of written an essay or done a piece of homework that you've tried really hard on and put a lot of effort into, to then get it back, and the main kind of criticism is, oh, your spelling's wrong. That can definitely be really hard, because it feels like, oh, they don't care about the other stuff, it's just the spelling that matters. So yeah, I definitely did find that hard. But yeah, I think I've kind of learned to embrace it and kind of accept it, and definitely making teachers aware is helpful. So what work do you do at the BDA?
So the BDA is the national charity that represents dyslexia. So it's a membership organisation. We've been around since 1973, so we've been around for quite some time now. We have individual members, we have professional members, which would be specialist teachers, and much of our work is around raising awareness awareness of dyslexia through things like training, and we deliver training to teachers and employers and just about anybody else who's interested. We do a lot of assessments, we run a national helpline, and one of our sort of key activities is lobbying government to make sure that dyslexic individuals in all walks of life are able to get the support that they need, and that includes things like having a specialist teacher in schools to support children and also to diagnose dyslexia. We're also a membership organisation.
Wow.
So we have a network of local groups who then are part of the national group, as well as having sort of members who join us as professionals. So we have a lot of teachers who are members of the BDA, particularly specialist teachers.
What kind of training do you offer at the BDA for teachers?
So it's pretty much everything, from basic awareness through to training for specialist teachers and everything in between, really. So a specialist teacher, those sort of qualifications are usually at level 5 and at level 7. So at level 5 they are a specialist teacher, and level 7 enables somebody to be able to be a specialist teacher and also to carry out assessments to diagnose dyslexia. So we have our own courses, but also we recognise and approve and accredit courses that other training organisations deliver, so things like universities and colleges, where teachers can go to become specialist dyslexia teachers. Have you had support from a specialist teacher?
Yeah, so I have at primary school and also kind of at secondary school now. I had one-to-one lessons with a learning support teacher who I go and see for an hour a week, and just to do reading and spelling. And she was really understanding and really compassionate, and she just kind of helped me to kind of boost my confidence, to accept it more, and really help me in like a classroom environment, which I think is really important.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the key things that we do is around setting the standards for specialist teachers.
Definitely.
And giving them that additional level of training that sort of enables them to support dyslexic learners. And I think that's really important. It also,
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, it just makes such a big difference to people, doesn't it? Getting that
really
right
does.
support.
Yeah, especially if you have a teacher that understands that you do have dyslexia and kind of the struggles that you face, it can make such a difference to like your learning and also performance as well, like in class and things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's really important that teachers are made aware and kind of understand it more.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that sort of specialist teachers are able to do is do the diagnostic assessments, which are really important.
Definitely.
But also then the assessment for exam access arrangements. So did you have any exam access arrangements?
Yeah, so I did. So I have extra time in exams, which really helped me, because one thing with having my dyslexia is that my reading speed is a lot slower. So in exams, it helps me so much just to have that extra time to kind of read the question properly, really understand it, kind of consolidate my thoughts, and then get on with my answer. Also, I have a laptop in exams, which has just, it's changed like my exams so much. So it kind of helps me consolidate my thoughts, because what I find with having dyslexia is I know what I want to say, I have all the thoughts and everything, but I just can't express what I want to say or write down what I am trying to say. So one thing with having the laptop, which is really good, is that I can kind of go back and change my answer to really express what I am trying to say and kind of consolidate that answer.
Yeah, and do you use any sort of particular techniques? So do you use mind mapping or assistive technology?
Yeah.
What sort of things do you use to support your work?
I've just done my GCSEs, so it was a lot of revision. And at school they were good at giving revision techniques, but they didn't really help give revision techniques to anyone with dyslexia.
Right.
It was all just, remember the facts and you'll be fine. So for me, that was quite overwhelming, because obviously having dyslexia, your memory, well, for me, my memory is not as good.
Can you tell me what mind mapping is and how do you use it?
Yeah, so what I like to do is get kind of a big A3 sheet of paper, and then depending on the topic, I write that in the middle with kind of a circle around it, and then draw kind of branches off the topic and write about the different subtopics. And I don't like to put a lot of kind of wordy text and long sentences, because then that kind of defeats the purpose of it. But just kind of keywords with lots of like colours and highlighters and things like that, and just making it as visual as possible so that I can visualise it, and then when I get into an exam I can think back to the mind map and see where the different facts and information is on a page. So mind mapping was such a big help, just the fact that I could visualise all my notes and everything. That really helped when it came to the exam. Also just kind of understanding what I was learning rather than just trying to memorise everything. Definitely just understanding it, and then maybe learning the odd fact here and there was helpful.
And I think that's kind of to do with that whole different processing, isn't it?
Definitely.
That you can't just, that the dyslexic brain needs to make these connections and needs to understand the whole thing.
Definitely.
You can't sort of say to somebody, just remember these facts in isolation. I think as a dyslexic sort of undertaking that kind of study, you need to be able to understand the big picture and where it all fits. And I think mind maps are really good at sort of providing that visual representation of that.
Definitely. And I think one thing that kind of people kind of don't really think about when talking to a dyslexic or trying to help them remember information is that it's no good just talking at them and telling them information and trying to make them remember it, because that's never going to work. It's much better if you help them understand it and kind of give them techniques that will help them to remember it. And I think people sort of think, oh, now in our classroom and exams it's just about remembering and then sort of putting it into an exam paper, reciting it really. But I think one of the key benefits of dyslexia is the fact that you have to understand all of it. There's kind of that. It doesn't work if you just know a little bit. You've kind of got to know all of it, and when you know all of it, you know it properly. Exactly,
and I think that's fascinating.
Definitely. I found that's really helped. So I've just started my A-levels as well, and everything from GCSE I remember so vividly and so well because I did have to understand it and properly learn it. Whereas I know some of my friends who don't have dyslexia, they just remembered the facts, revised, crammed everything the night before, and it was all fine for them. But now they come to A-level, they don't remember anything because it was kind of in their short-term memory. And
so there's definitely gives you an advantage, I think, going forwards.
For sure, and definitely problem solving. I can feel that I can do that so much easier than somebody that doesn't have dyslexia, and I'm more kind of creative.
Yeah, and I think, as I say, I think we sometimes focus on, the problems with spelling and the problems with reading, but nowadays with technology, those difficulties are quite easy to sort of overcome and accommodate, with
definitely.
spell checkers and grammar checkers and text reading software and all of that kind of thing.
Exactly, that's really helped me, especially with having like spell check and things, because it's less about the spelling and me thinking, oh, is this spelt right, is this worded correctly, but more actually about the content and the things that I'm writing. So that's been a big help.
So how do you feel, it's sort of a bit of a tough question really, but how do you feel in exams when you're penalised for your spelling, punctuation and grammar? As something that you struggle with and really, is part and parcel of the dyslexia. So how does that make you feel when you don't get those marks?
I mean, it can be really hard because I do find teachers, they like to focus on the spelling and, oh, this wasn't worded correctly. And obviously for me, that's kind of tough to take because, in my opinion, that's not something that I can change very easily. And spelling doesn't really come naturally to me. And even if I do try and spell correctly, it's still not always right. I definitely think that, it has been hard. And sometimes when you get an essay back or something with like red pen all over it with like, oh, this isn't right because of your spelling, that can be tough to take. So that's why I think making teachers aware is really important. So they're kind of, they do tell you when you've done something wrong, but they do it in a kind of more subtle way to encourage you.
Yeah. So if you think, which is more important, like spelling and grammar or the content of what you're writing?
Definitely the content, for sure. I just hate spelling and grammar. And I think that if you've got a really interesting point that you want to make or a really interesting article that you're trying to write or something, that's so much more important than the kind of nitpicky grammar and spelling.
Well, I'm going to agree with you on that for sure. And so if you were sort of looking back on your sort of 7-8-year-old self, what would you say to that person now?
I definitely say don't worry. I was such a worrier when I was little, and I used to stress about my dyslexia and like, oh, well, why am I not good enough, and why can't I do what everyone else can do? And it was really hard. And I was like kind of embarrassed about it. I didn't want to tell people. I didn't want my teachers to make a fuss about it and single me out in the classroom. But kind of now I've got older, I've realised that it didn't actually matter and it was fine and they were only trying to help. And I definitely like embraced it a lot more, and I'm not kind of afraid to talk about it or tell people or share like my story. I think kind of just as you grow up and you get more confident, you realise that. But I'd say to my younger self, probably just don't worry, it's all going to be fine, and it's not a big deal. It doesn't need to be a big deal if you don't make it. It's just something that you've got to live with, and if you embrace it, it's so much better and more beneficial.
Yeah. I mean, do you think for somebody who maybe hadn't had that diagnosis, and they were going through education, how do you think they would feel kind of not having a way to articulate or a label to put on those struggles?
Definitely. I think it must be a lot harder. For me, one of the really good things was that I was diagnosed at quite a young age. So obviously I had support and people around me that helped me. But I think if you're not diagnosed and you don't know, you can kind of take it quite personally and think, oh, it's just me being stupid, or I'm so dumb, I don't understand, or I can't spell. But actually, like, it's not that. There is a genuine reason. And it's not that you're not trying or you're not putting in the effort or the same amount as work as someone else, because they probably are, but it just takes them a lot longer. I imagine it must be very difficult if you're not diagnosed.
Yeah. I mean, at the BDA we have a helpline, and we get a lot of calls from parents of dyslexic children, and one of the things, sadly, that they say to us is that their children are feeling really anxious and that they're lacking confidence and self-esteem to an extreme. So sort of issues around mental health and well-being, and I think that's really sad.
Definitely.
Particularly as you're a great example of somebody where that diagnosis happened, it's been really positive in terms of your identity and your confidence and your self-esteem.
Definitely. Yeah.
So I think it's a real shame that more people can't get those assessments, and that it isn't something mainstream that's available to everybody.
I think being diagnosed was probably just the most beneficial thing that kind of ever happened to me, really, because it just for your confidence, it really gives you a reason why you are struggling. So I think if a child's not diagnosed, it's definitely 100% worth doing it. And even if it turns out that it's nothing, or they're not dyslexic but they just kind of struggle a bit, it's still good to know for yourself what it is.
I mean, we do a lot of assessments at the BDA, and it's really interesting. I think people are quite anxious. I mean, being assessed isn't a particularly enjoyable experience. Do you remember your assessment?
I do, yeah. I remember I went with my mum, and I kind of didn't really understand why I was going or what it was for, and she'd just say, oh, it's just like a fun test, it's nothing to worry about, it's all going to be fine, don't worry. And so I went along, and they gave me all the kind of assessments that you have to do, and the spelling and the reading and things, and it was quite kind of stressful and a bit nerve-wracking at the time, because I was quite young, I didn't understand what was going on, I didn't know what it meant. It was definitely hard, the assessment. And then the next day, when I kind of did find out that I did have dyslexia, and going back to school was quite a weird feeling. Going from one day I just thought I was normal, to kind of the next day realising, oh, I do have something, this dyslexia, that is going to affect me, but actually it is a positive thing. And it's something to embrace.
Yeah, I'm not sure we would use the words fun and test in the same sentence, to be honest. No, and I think a lot of parents feel quite anxious around the assessment, and certainly people we assess sort of feel quite anxious, but actually it's kind of a really important process to get that diagnosis, and the assessment is part and parcel of that.
Sure.
So it's maybe not the most enjoyable fun test, but it's certainly really beneficial.
Yeah.
And I think then the other thing that comes out of that is, of course, all the recommendations for support that are really useful for teachers who maybe don't have that specialist knowledge, that they can kind of go, oh, right, well, if I try doing this in the classroom, or I try doing that. So maybe, you know, things like giving pupils information in advance of the lesson so they can pre-read and pre-prepare, and giving them handouts rather than copying from the board, which I know
that can be a real challenge.
Yeah, massively challenging, sort of having to remember what's up there and then write it down before they take it away again.
I know what I struggle with when teachers, they'll say, oh, copy this down from the board, and then they tell you information at the same time when they try and explain a point or something. And that can be really difficult, trying to listen to what they're saying and process it, as well as remembering what's on the board and copying it down and writing it and getting all your spelling right. So definitely that's a tricky thing for someone with dyslexia. Yeah,
and I mean, I think nowadays, sort of using smart boards and things, it's quite easy to print things out or to use handouts. And I think having, you know, especially having with what you've said about reading and that it takes you a little bit longer, it would make sense to kind of actually make sure learners have that information in advance, and then they can ask questions about the information rather than trying to sort of take it all in and assimilate it in a very short period of time, because that's always going to be a bit of a challenge.
So what are you doing to kind of help teachers become more aware of dyslexia?
Well, things sort of like training. So we run huge amounts of training and awareness training for teachers. We do lots and lots of webinars with lots and lots of different organisations, and we run our own webinars around all sorts of aspects of dyslexia, from basic awareness through to identification, through to dyslexia-friendly classrooms and how to achieve them. We have our dyslexia-friendly quality mark for schools, so that gives schools a really practical framework that they can work towards to try and embed dyslexia-friendly practices within mainstream. And then all of the information on our website, which is a lot of information for people to take in.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think, both for individuals and for teachers and also for parents, having that information available that then enables them to be more aware and more supportive.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that's really important. Good, just making people aware of dyslexia and what it is and how it affects children and adults and just people in life generally, and kind of the struggles they face that they may need a bit of extra support with. I think that's really good.
Yeah. But I also think we shouldn't forget that there are particular strengths, you know, because sometimes we kind of go, oh, right, there's all these challenges. But I think there are particular strengths with dyslexia. And if we could harness and tap into those, then, you know, it would really help, I think.
I found that, like, I'm quite a creative person, and I love kind of the arts, and like kind of I do politics, geography and economics for A-level, and I find the good thing about those subjects is they really require you to have your own opinions and think kind of outside the box, which I'm having dyslexia I'm quite good at. And I definitely think dyslexia is a gift in a way, because there's so many things that it does make it easier for you to achieve.
Yeah, it's just you need to get that support, and you need to get that assessment, really, don't you? I mean, I think that's kind of the catalyst that enables you to unlock that potential and that ability. So that's, you know, the key, I think, with a lot of it. So what else would you like to ask me about the BDA?
Yeah, so how did you get into...
Well, that's an interesting question. So I was actually working as a teacher, and I was working with, shall we say, some young men who were quite naughty, disengaged, I think, as we might like to call them. And I kind of got quite frustrated with myself that I couldn't seem to get them to learn effectively. Yeah. And so I was kind of exploring what I could do and what it might be. And then I really just stumbled across dyslexia. And then the more I found out, the more I realised that actually what I was looking at was pretty much a class full of dyslexic young men. So found out a bit more. I connected with my local BDA Dyslexia Association, who said to me, well, you're a teacher, why don't you become a specialist teacher? So I I went off and became a specialist teacher. And interestingly, both of my two children are dyslexic, who are now grown up and left home, but supporting them through education as well. So I've worked for the BDA now for many years, but it's really interesting because no 2 days are the same. We get to go to some really interesting places. So I've delivered dyslexia awareness training in number 10 Downing Street, which was just kind of mind blowing as you're walking through the door of number 10. But equally, I've spent a lot of time working with young offenders and adult offenders and within the prison sector. Wow. So it's kind of like that polar opposite. We kind of, dyslexia crosses all social economic boundaries, it crosses all intellectual abilities. So really, wherever dyslexia is, then we tend to be, or at least want to be.
And you sound like you're really passionate and you really enjoy what you do.
Oh yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I mean, it's that whole really making a difference. So I think when we're working with teachers and they really have that light bulb moment and they go, oh right, so that's Jane or Fred or whoever in my class, that's why they are doing whatever it is they're doing. And you can really see sort of teachers connecting with it and starting to apply it to their sort of teaching practice, and they're starting to recognise learners within their classes who have those sorts of challenges. So when you get those light bulb moments, you kind of go, yes, they've got it. And equally, one of the things we're doing at the moment is the BDA are running parents' roadshows on a Saturday afternoon. So I'm spending my time travelling around the country. I was in a very soggy Leeds the other day, and sort of connecting with parents and sharing information, because I think parents are quite anxious around it. Yeah, definitely. There's I mean, I'm sure your parents felt the same. There's a lot of pressure on parents to sort of help their children to read, and if you don't, if your child isn't reading very before they go to school, never mind when they're in school, that they're you're somehow inadequate parenting. So we're going around talking to parents about what dyslexia is, how to support children, how to work with the school effectively.
I think that's really good. I know I have a twin brother actually, so for me and him we were always kind of directly compared. And he would be able to read all these complicated books and things, and I kind of wouldn't really understand. So my parents, they got quite anxious and they didn't know kind of what they were doing wrong, or if it was something they were doing wrong. So I think for them as well, it put their mind at ease when I was diagnosed, that it wasn't them, like it was fine, it was all going to be okay.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when my two boys were in school, and the stress and anxiety that I had around they're not performing, they're not achieving, and what's going to become of them. And actually they've both turned out okay. And so it is lots of positives, but definitely. Then, as I say, when with the work that we do across the BDA, and we're working in prisons, and you kind of think, when it goes wrong, it kind of goes wrong big time. So I mean, our mission is to really just spread awareness and to do the training to get people the right skills, knowledge, so that they can help and support individuals.
I think that's really good what you're doing and the work that you're doing.
Well, we're trying. Yeah. We're trying. We're definitely trying, and we're definitely sort of pushing it out there. So, and we're trying to get government as well. So we do quite a lot of political lobbying to get government to take it on board, and to make sure that there is a specialist teacher in every school, because we feel that is such an important thing, and as you found, that's made such a big difference to your experiences of dyslexia, to have that specialist support.
Sure. And just having teachers understand that you do have dyslexia and being kind of aware of that can make such a difference to kind of your education and your performance. How do you think people's attitudes and kind of opinions on dyslexia have changed?
I think that's a really interesting question, Ruby, because BDA has been around, say, since 1973, so quite some time. And we came into being because parents came together to support each other because they couldn't get support for their children in school. And because of the work that those parents did and the lobbying and then the coming together as a united group, they were able to make really important and substantial changes, and literally to get dyslexia recognised as being a thing. Before that time, it really wasn't. So they were really sort of the founding fathers and mothers, quite literally, of dyslexia. And then as they sort of did more and raised more awareness and it became more mainstream, then children started to get recognised and support hopefully was put in place for them. And then we had a period sort of in the 80s where the government committed some money to actually training specialist teachers. And what we saw in that era, following a piece of sort of legislation called the Rose Review of Education, we saw a massive change in attitude towards dyslexia. It became much more positive. It was support for dyslexia became much more accessible. And so children actually got quite often really good support. And what's interesting now is that a lot of those children who benefited from that support we're now seeing in the workplace, and they're being really successful. Unfortunately, in the last sort of few years, I suppose the last 10, 12 years, maybe a bit more, we've seen that uptake of or that understanding of dyslexia has really dwindled. And so we had sort of a golden era where we had specialist teachers who were available, and clearly you know the benefits of those. And now we're into an era where there are a lot fewer specialist teachers. Teachers who are doing teacher training are really not getting enough information on dyslexia, or actually other specific learning difficulties and disabilities. So what we're seeing are a lot of teachers in schools who, whilst they really, really, really want to support learners and they want to support the children in their class, they've not kind of got enough skills and knowledge to do that. So the BDA is really campaigning quite vigorously and to really push this issue now, because we're seeing a lot of children who are very much underachieving in education, whereas, like say, you're a shining example of what somebody can achieve, and we would like to see all children have that same opportunity to achieve their potential. What was your greatest challenge?
Well, I think definitely reading was such a big challenge for me. When I'd read words on a page, I could never understand what they were saying. I'd read the words, but not kind of the sentence. It wouldn't make sense in my brain. So that was really hard at the beginning, especially before I was diagnosed, because I just couldn't understand the words, definitely. And also my memory isn't very good, which especially now I've got older is definitely kind of a more significant impact for me. Because it does take me so much longer to remember things, and I do have to find my own way of remembering things, so that can be challenging and take a lot of extra time and effort, and you have to be very kind of motivated and keep going and not kind of give up, because otherwise if you did, you just wouldn't get anywhere.
What's your greatest achievement?
So I always really struggled with English and reading and writing. But I just did my GCSEs and I got an A-star in English.
Oh, wow.
So I was
That's
so
amazing.
thrilled with that. And I was kind of predicted to get like C's and do kind of not very well, partly because of my dyslexia. So to kind of defy the odds and actually do really well was just such an amazing feeling to me.
Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to us today. Just one last question. How would you reassure somebody who's just been diagnosed with dyslexia?
Yeah, well, I mean, it can be very overwhelming when you're first diagnosed and perhaps you don't know much about it or what it is or what it's going to entail or how it's going to affect you for the rest of your life. But I'd kind of just say, don't worry, everything is going to be fine. And although it probably will be challenging, and there will be times when you think, oh, why is this me? Why do I have to have dyslexia? And oh, I can't read and things like that. But I definitely say just keep going, and it will get so much easier. And if you've got a good support system and you know that there's teachers you can go to that will help you and understand, that can make such a big difference. And also kind of don't be scared to ask the teachers or people around you for help or tell them about your dyslexia, because actually if they are more aware, then they can do so much more to help you. But definitely just don't worry. Everything will be fine.
Thank you. And thank you. I mean, it's been fantastic
Thank
having
you so
your
much.
insight, because I think there's, it's that really sort of describes what it's like to be dyslexic.
Yeah, well, it's been
Thank
great
you.
to talk to you. Thank you so
you.
much.